There's a legendary story of the most famous opiate addict surgeon is Dr. Holstead. And he was certainly high for the last 25 years of his career. Developed a cocaine addiction as he was mapping out the peripheral nerves. He would inject himself with cocaine. Opiates are classified as pain medicine, but they're not really pain medicine. They're suffering medicine. So they're not great at relieving pain, but they are great at making you not care.
Would you classify adrenaline as some kind of stimulant, like super stimulant?
Yeah, it's definitely
Well, welcome to our show. This is obviously Dopey, the podcast on drugs, addiction, and dumb shit. And you are Dr. Jason Giles.
That's me.
Board-certified addictionologist.
Yeah, that's an interesting term. Yeah, I'm board certified in addiction medicine 2 times.
What does it mean? I was talking, and Dr. Giles works at one of our longest time sponsor, the Great Oral Recovery. And I was talking to Jared about you, and he said it's very important that he's board certified because most places have addictionologists that are not board certified.
Right.
They find them in like a helicopter or something on the street.
Yes, dropped out of a helicopter maybe. So you're talking about a couple of things. You're talking about the board certification in the field, which is relatively new. It's a new specialty, addiction medicine.
How new?
The notions of it probably, formally it's about maybe 15 or 20 years old, formally, where you could sit for boards and get certified. But it's so new that it actually changed parent board certifying organizations. So it used to be certified by the American Board of Addiction Medicine. And then they handed it off to a much older board granting agency or board supervising agency called American Board of Preventive Medicine, ABPM. And so that's why I said twice. So I took and passed the exam for it in, maybe 2008, maybe. So a long time ago. But then they changed supervising agency, so I had to take it again. And now, so I'm concurrently certified by one organization that is no longer responsible for it and one that is, which is the ABPM. So that's addiction medicine.
But more importantly, you're a horrible drug addict as well.
That's the actual credential. That's the one I think matters. They both matter. I think it's important to know what you're doing. It's also important to be able to relate to the patients, and vice versa, for the patients to be able to relate to their caregivers, to their medical doctor, ideally. So yeah, it's and then before all that, I was board certified in anesthesiology and pain medicine. So a lot of tests.
Wow, there's so much to talk about, but I want to, because I have a lot of weird field questions, but I think your story is fascinating because the trajectory seems so obvious. You start in
looking back,
right?
Yes, it does. Yes,
hindsight is 20/20.
Sure,
but it's amazing to me to have the board certified addictionologist of oral recovery that also happened to be a pain management doctor and an anesthesiologist that became a fentanyl addict in order to be sober and be given care.
It's an odd story, right?
And you grew up in California?
I grew up in California, not too far from the beach, in a town called Santa Monica.
It's a great story because it's I think that we're going to look for the nooks and crannies that connect you with our horrible audience of drug addicts. Because there's going to be, and it's going to be...
Count me among them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you grew up in Santa Monica.
I grew up in Santa Monica. My parents, my mother's from here, actually. She's from Far Rockaway, New York.
Nice.
My dad spirited her away in the late 1960s, and then the stork brought me soon after that. I was born not far from Santa Monica, in a town called Culver City.
Culver City,
yeah,
LA.
So right around the corner.
Is that in Los Angeles, Culver City?
Yeah, there is no Los Angeles. There is no city proper of Los Angeles. I mean, technically, officially, but it's not really a city like New York is a city. It's dispersed, spread out. It doesn't have a city cohesiveness. Some people are going to be mad at me about that, but there's West Side and beach and valley, and there's areas of LA, but it's not like here.
Is Culver City a city, or it's just a neighborhood?
Culver City is technically a city.
That's crazy.
But it's about the size of a neighborhood.
Okay, so you grew up in Culver City.
I grew up in Santa Monica, and went through the school system there. And then I don't know this. You said it makes sense in reverse. This weird story of mine, but there may have been some foreshadowing about this weird story, which is I dropped out of high school. So there were a bunch of things going on in my house when I was growing up. My dad was an alcoholic. So I was exposed to that and the struggles of that early. And then
How bad was he?
Bad, really bad. Yeah, really bad. And I think there was a gap in attention. That's probably the best way I can describe it. Sometimes my wife says, how did you make it? How did you get through? And I think they weren't paying attention. And in that gap of attention, I quit going to class, which is kind of strange for a guy who ultimately went to Berkeley and medical school and so forth. But I was bored, and I was also looking for my own adventure or my own excitement.
What were you into when you were a teenager?
I was into music.
Like what?
Like ska music.
Really?
Yeah.
Like what ska music were you into?
Like the Specials and the Untouchables and
the Selector. Bad Manners.
Yeah. Madness.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you're a Southern California. That would be second wave ska. Would they call that?
Yeah, for sure.
And
after the mods,
were you wearing but after the Jamaican ska guys,
right?
Were you wearing like ska clothes and stuff? Were you that into ska?
I was that into ska.
I was too.
Yeah. Were you?
That's cool. I grew up in ska bands in Manhattan.
Interesting.
It's very weird because it's very rare that happens.
It's unusual. Yeah. In fact, an Untouchable song just came on the radio the other day.
I haven't heard of the Untouchables.
It was a local band, and my wife was in the car with me. I said, "Oh my gosh, I haven't heard this song in I don't want to say many years," and she said, "I've never heard of them before. Never heard of this band." But I was into that. I was into riding around on my Vespa.
You were the real thing. Yeah. You had the Vespa?
Yeah.
What kind of clothes were you wearing?
I had shark skin, narrow lapel suits.
Really?
Yeah. And I had a parka. It was sort of straight out of Quadrophenia, and mirrors all over. And
that is amazing. Yeah. I'm listening to the Pete Townsend book. I read it. I love Pete Townsend.
Yeah.
And I love all that. But it's so weird how different all of that that music is from ska music.
That music is different, but the origin, the working class, and the collapse of Great Britain, the economy and all that stuff.
Skinhead Britain was tied to Jamaican music and tied to ska music, but it's so it's weird that Quadrophenia was connected to that. The music was so different between the music from Quadrophenia and anything mod or Rude Boy, whatever style.
Yeah. Well,
this is a great detour, by the way.
Yes, I think you're right. I haven't thought about that. For us, we listened to all that stuff. I mean, we just listened to it. We thought it was cool. I don't think I separated it out as well. We also like the Who. It was just all together. It was all part of it. I remember, the Who, and I liked all of it. I liked there was Tommy had come out as well, which is not ska by any stretch,
or mod either.
No, but it's interesting, and it's it tells a story of broken family and lost father, and I related to that. I understood that.
So how bad was your dad an alcoholic?
My dad was a quart a day gin drinker, and I remember I was into figuring stuff out even then, and I remember concluding that it takes about an hour to metabolize a drink of alcohol. I saw that on the back of the DMV license renewal test booklet. Must have been somebody was studying for the test. And if there's 32 ounces of alcohol in a quart and it takes an hour to metabolize a drink, then there was no point in the day when my dad was not drunk. And that's what it was for far back as I can remember. And with all the downstream consequences of unreliability and disappearing and so forth. It was very, very unstable. And
Was he
then he would
violent?
return. Yes. And then he would return and we wanted him to stay. We wanted it to be over. And then of course it wasn't. So yeah, it was not great. Not great. And
So-
I think that's a huge part of why I took off on my own.
Were you drinking when you were in that rude boy persona period?
Yeah, for sure. Drinking and
Smoking weed?
smoking weed. There were
Taking amphetamines?
for definitely taking amphetamines. That was like part of the
Culture.
part of the culture, part of the admission requirements if you're going to be hanging out with these guys. And yeah, the Christmas trees and crosstops and black beauties and all that stuff. It's probably all the same. It's probably just amphetamines, but that was part of it. And we'd go on these long rides. We'd, take a bunch of
Vespa rides.
amphetamines, go on long Vespa rides.
Do you have a Vespa now?
I don't. But sometimes I think about getting
Why
one.
don't you get one?
I think about it.
I
yeah.
think you should.
I stopped riding motorcycles when the kids were born because I've seen too much. There's too many motorcycle accidents have come to the hospital when I was there. And so I don't ride motorcycles.
Vespas are very cool, though.
Vespas are very cool.
So anyway, you grew up and what was your mom's deal?
My mom was trying to hold it all together. She was trying to shield us from my dad, this is deep codependency, but trying to be the kind of wife that he would sober up for. And ultimately, I suppose she was, because right about when I left, so I would have been 18 years old and 30 seconds, right when I left for real, he stopped drinking.
Really?
Yes. So my dad was sober for the last 35
That's
or
amazing.
so years of his life. Yeah. Yeah. He stopped. And in a fashion, put relationships back together. We were able to work through a bunch of stuff together. I got sober also. I'm sure that helped a lot. But I would say of him that I wish he had gotten more out of the program of recovery. He only got the first half of the first step, right? So he got the plug in the jug, but he was still really angry,
Dry, angry, whatever.
crispy. Yeah.
So when you leave, where do you go?
When I leave, I moved to the Valley, and tried to make it. Tried to do work. Actually worked. I know a tiny bit of your story that you worked at this deli here in.
I still do.
Do you?
Yeah.
And it's a great deli. And I also worked in a deli. So
We have a lot in common.
my mom's a waitress. She worked at Factor's Deli, which is on Pico
Okay.
in Beverlywood, which is near Beverly Hills. And I remember there's a whole hodgepodge of different jobs that I did before I finally went to college, started taking classes, and then ultimately stayed on the academic course. But I worked in the deli. I worked with my mom. So I was slinging corned beef sandwiches and kasha varnishkas and the whole thing. And
It's so weird
It was
that
really fun.
everybody that works in a deli winds up saying they're slinging corned beef or slinging pastrami.
yeah.
But nobody says they're like slinging chicken parmesan.
Yes, we did not have chicken parmesan.
I
So
don't
we weren't
mean that.
slinging-
I mean, like, you never hear about like a waiter in an Italian restaurant who's like, I'm
no, you
slinging
You hear people
linguine.
say slinging grits or
Right.
yeah,
Or pastrami.
yeah, or pastrami.
I wonder why that
it's
is.
usually hash, slinging hash.
Slinging
but
hash.
That has a different meaning too.
I sling Nepalese temple ball hash. So what kind of drug addict were you? Like, at this point you were pretty manageable, right?
So the pattern for me was probably pretty well established back then, which is if I had something big that caught my attention, I didn't have time to be much of a drug addict.
Give me an example.
Well, ultimately, it was being deep in a biochemistry degree at Berkeley and chasing that to get into medical school. So doing research and so forth. And I barely drank at all. There was no partying, no drugs, no nothing.
Your purpose superseded your using.
Thursday nights at Blake's, which my son was just in Berkeley. He said it's gone, but it was a bar on Telegraph Avenue, and in the basement they had blues and jazz, and the greats actually would come. And so Thursday nights I would do that when I was.
Who did you get to see there?
I saw a ton of people there, all kinds of people, and on the tail end, oh my gosh, I just forgot. Let's see, Leon Redbone, and who else did I see there? And I'll get it confused with Yoshi's, which is the other place that we saw stuff. I've drawn a blank, but
it's okay. I don't mean to put you on the spot.
I'll think of it. But anyhow,
this isn't a podcast about who you saw in San Francisco.
Yeah, it's a little bit of that, a little bit of college fun, but for the most part, I was just head down and
studious,
working my tail off, and that's the way it was. If I was chasing something big or purpose driven or on a mission, it was very easy to set those things aside. When I would crest the hill and get a bit of relief and have it figured out, that's when I know some would say sabotage, some would say protect myself from the feelings of impending loss. This is a complicated thing, but there's this pattern of getting something and then feeling like it don't deserve it, doesn't fit, some of the imposter syndrome kind of an idea there. Anyhow, whatever it was, that when things were good, look out. When things are tough and challenging, I was usually okay, as long as I was chasing something.
It was easier to fight through adversity than sit with something good.
Yes, we're jumping around, but there was a guy in the meeting where I ultimately got sober in Sacramento, and he was teens, I don't know, 12, 13, 14 years sober, something like that, a physician. And he shared one day, and I was sober like a couple weeks, I don't know, a few months, maybe tops. And I remember he shared that if you get into and stay in recovery, that the ultimate challenge is handling success. And when I heard that, I thought, well, I sure would like to have some of this success that you're having trouble handling. I didn't understand, but my observation of other people and my experience myself is if you do stay sober and keep doing the work, as they say, your life will get good. And then it gets interesting. Do you have to pull it all down? Do you have to?
Well, like, are you going to fuck it up with yourself?
Are you going to fuck it up? Just don't push that red button, right? And I see it a lot. And
in your work, you mean?
Yes.
Well, we'll get there. I want to hear how you fucking destroyed everything for yourself before we get to how you put everybody else together.
Upscotch. Yes. So anyhow, that's the overall general pattern is when there's a lot going on and it's hard, I'm all right. When it gets easy or I've got it kind of figured out a little bit, then I don't know, the old habits creep in or self-sabotage creeps in.
I'm interested in this idea of purpose and recovery.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we have a community of people, and some of the people in our community are very are like totally sold on 12-step, and others can't stand it. And like, they're scared to go, they're scared of God, they're scared to do step work, whatever.
I get that. Sure.
And you don't, and I'm jumping around a little bit too, but there's nowhere in the literature where it talks about how having a purpose helps staying sober. Like, that's not part of 12-step recovery. Purpose, except service as purpose.
Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. Yes.
Primary purpose.
Yeah. Primary purpose is to help other alcoholics to achieve
stay
sobriety.
Sober. Right.
Yeah.
So I guess you have to adopt this other purpose. I'm interested in like offering people who listen, or anybody, the idea of finding any purpose as a means to stopping.
Well, that's a really old idea. The idea of being on a mission that long predates
12 steps.
12 steps or AA as such. Yeah, I mean all the ancient literature. I mean, you can go back to Gilgamesh or
right,
and So the old stories are all about a mission, and the missions are all the same. I mean, this is the hero with 1,000 faces or 10,000 faces. It's you confront the scary thing in the underworld and defeat it and get the gold, which is the alchemical gold, knowledge, and bring that back up to the surface for the benefit of everyone else. So that rubric of and of course the thing you're fighting is yourself, right? The demon,
is you.
Apsu, Darth Vader, whoever it is, you're fighting yourself. And it's the idea ultimately that you aren't good enough, don't belong, something's wrong with you, you're outside of the universe. That's who you're fighting, is the evil version of yourself. And that I think is, if you read Bill's story in the big book, that's the same. It's the same thing, right? He's got this penchant for understanding things. He makes the boomerang. He's
Wait, what boomerang?
It's the story of Bill making. He gets interested in boomerangs. He gets interested. It's isn't in the big book. It's in other
that's
literature.
Definitely not in the Bill's. He
Literature.
became interested in making boomerangs.
Yeah, and ants. He wrote papers on ants, and so he's a curious sort and trying to understand things. And he has this experience, and then I think my read on it is that Bill becomes an evangelical for this new way of life. It becomes his mission,
his purpose. Yeah.
Yes, and so I think that's why it's one of the
Can
steps.
we take another quick sidetrack?
Yeah.
What was he interested about boomerangs? Boomerangs are very cool.
Boomerangs are very cool. Yeah.
I think maybe the iconography of the boomerang should get included in the Dopey logo somehow, because it's such a cool looking thing. So what was his interest in boomerangs?
Well, he was just interested in different things. He was interested in them, and he made a boomerang. He learned about it and he made it, and I don't know how he got interested in it, how he was exposed to it.
Maybe the A's in AA are somehow boomerang shaped themselves.
I haven't thought about that. Maybe they are. That one in the latest version of the big book, they've got the cursive A on there. Maybe
it's a little boomerang,
a little nod. It's possible, but it could have been anything. And in fact, it was. He wrote a paper on ants, and that's so it says. So the folklore goes. So the legend goes that personality of digging in and trying to learn as much as possible is what where he got this kind of corporate intelligence, this research of companies, where he would go to the company and go to the factory and so forth, which is why he was in Akron, Ohio, doing research for, was it Foy, and I forgot the company that he was working for. But anyhow, the notion of a mission is, for me, very similar to the notion of higher power. So it's something bigger than you, right? It's something you can't accomplish on your own. It's something that isn't only for you. In fact, it isn't primarily for you. You're the downstream beneficiary of it. It's something big. It's being part of something big.
It's also the greatest, for me, misdirection. Anything that I can focus on that isn't me is usually going to make everything else better. What did he love about ants? Was it the team? The greater good of the colony? What was his thing with ants?
Probably.
Do you like
he's
ants?
Interested. Yeah, sure. I mean, ants are interesting and bees are interesting, and I love the natural world. So yes, and they're incredibly strong. Ants are very strong, and ants seem to follow some kind of unseen trail. We know now that they lay down markers that they follow.
So they're following their own
scent.
trail.
Yes. But it doesn't, you can't see that from the outside. It just looks like they stay in this line and they know where to go. Yeah, I think he was just a curious sort. The part I relate to about Bill being interested in ants and boomerangs is I was interested in biochemistry. I was interested in, music. I was interested in these different things. And what you just said, I think, is really important. It takes me out of myself, and I can burrow and keep learning and look for patterns and look for symmetry, and it's the quest to understand. It's trying to understand the world
without getting caught up in, am I good enough? Am I okay? What is, what's my place? Why am I not this?
And unless you're unless you aren't making a weapons grade boomerang and you feel not good enough because of that, or unless you have fallen short of cataloging all the ants, and that's yours, right? You can flagellate yourself on just about anything. But I think I feel, and many do, excited and interested when I'm learning something new, when I'm discovering something
it's
that
amazing.
maybe was overlooked. Yeah, exactly.
And so you're doing biochemistry, and how do you get into medicine?
Well, at Cal, I volunteered at the Berkeley Free Clinic, which was exactly what it sounds like. It was a free clinic. It was essentially a homeless clinic.
It's like a famous place, actually.
It's become famous. Yes, it's become famous. And last year I had dinner with David Smith, who was the founder of the Haight-Ashbury Free Clinic, and I got to ask him. I said, "Well, what's the relationship? How did this work?" And he was already pretty well known by the time I was there. He's a lot older, David Smith. He was there in the Haight-Ashbury times in San Francisco, right? He was the internist that was helping drug addicts, which caused a lot of controversy. But the cops were bringing people to him because he could actually help them.
Well, everybody was strung out, speed, heroin, LSD at that point.
And then he was funded by the bands, which is very cool.
How did that work?
His clinic,
like the Grateful Dead and Jefferson Airplane and stuff would throw the money down?
Yes, because the insurance companies wouldn't cover his services because he was helping drug addicts.
And they're like, "Yeah, man, you got to help our scene, man. So we're going to slide you a little money, man."
Exactly. And there's a Manson connection there.
What's the Manson connection?
He was down there also. He was actually in the clinic. I don't think he was a patient in the clinic, but he was. Now look, this is more controversy, but some say that he was a CIA asset and study subject of MK Ultra.
Manson.
Yes.
But he went off the reservation.
Yes. So I don't know. It's not my bailiwick. It's not my specialty.
What's your take? Do you think the CIA murdered Bob Marley?
I don't know about that. I do think they murdered Bob RFK. I think they murdered Robert Kennedy.
You do?
Yeah.
Do you think it's possible to put cancer in a shoe?
Sure.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get back to the story.
Yeah.
So by the way, this is fantastic. When you moved to San Francisco, are you still into ska, or did you become a hippie in Berkeley?
I embraced the new culture when I moved up there to Berkeley.
Sharkskin suits or no?
No.
You're done.
No, I let that go. I was a serious academic by that time. I went to the community college. That's how I got back into school, and then I got serious about school, and I applied to MIT and Berkeley, and I got into both. But Berkeley was a state school, and I got a scholarship, and so I went there.
You're from California.
And I'm from California. And the school there was great. It was great for me. It was great to be exposed to the free clinic. Free clinic is where I fell in love with medicine. But I was also flirting with research. So I was in Dan Koshland's lab, who was a really famous scientist at the time. And he was the editor of Science Magazine, and he had reorganized the way we teach science. Great guy. And so I was in his lab, and then I was also working at the free clinic as a, I don't know, lay practitioner. But we would take these courses. They had classes of how to take vitals and how to look in the ears and so we were kind of doing stuff. And then we had this great doctor who came from Highland General Hospital, and he would mentor us and supervise these medical school hopefuls mostly. Anyhow, David Smith was connected with that, helped get them started, help them start, but then he wasn't involved in the management of that. So that's the lineage of that clinic. It was a cool place.
Was your drug use like not
scant?
So like you're like, okay, I'm not a drug addict. I'm not an alcoholic.
No.
I'm learning. I'm finding my purpose. I'm finding my way. What led you to pain management?
It's part of anesthesiology. Pain management is in the.
What led you? Why anesthesiology though?
It's just a weird thing, you know. In hindsight, it looks like, oh yeah, the guy who became a drug addict went into anesthesiology. That's where the drugs.
That's where
are.
I would have gone.
That's where the drugs are.
Yes.
But the truth is, it was a weird time. So when I came out of school, My problem was I liked everything. When I was doing obstetrics, I wanted to deliver babies. And when I was doing pediatrics, I wanted to be a pediatrician. And when I was doing surgery, I wanted to be a surgeon. And I had a hard time picking a specialty, even coming out of medical school, because I liked it all. And so I punted. I wound up in general surgery because that's general. And I like those guys.
You have a lot of options.
I got a lot of options. We figured out from there, there's specialties to go to after that. And so I went to general surgery. I stayed at the hospital where I was. And it was fine. It was okay. But then I started to get recruited by the chairman of the department for anesthesia. So he saw me in the OR all the time. I was doing cases. I was around.
He's like, he could be my anesthesiology star.
And part of it was they were shorthanded. So there was some stuff going on at the federal level. Remember Hillary Care? I don't know if you remember that, but Hillary Care was going to be this thing where you don't have to go to the doctor anymore. And the golden age of medicine was going to be over. And a lot of the group practices were like, holy shit, this is our last year to make any money. And so they didn't hire anybody. And so the anesthesia practices didn't hire anesthesiologists coming out of school. Plastic surgery didn't hire anybody. Radiology didn't hire anybody. And you only have to go back a couple of years in residency before the residents were thinking, why am I in this specialty? I'm not going to be able to get a job. So they started to drop out. And anesthesia, which had been the most difficult specialty to get into, to get accepted into residency, all of a sudden had openings. And so they had openings.
Why was it the most difficult? Everybody wanted to.
It's gnarly. I mean, anesthesia is tough. It's all surgery on all patients, so infants to 100-year-old people, with all medical problems.
And you're riding this crazy line that if you give not enough, the person is.
I mean, the work itself is complicated and tricky and dangerous, and no one goes to the hospital for anesthesia services, right? No one says, "Hey, I'm here for my anesthesia."
I would love to go for anesthesia.
They're here for surgery, right? They're here for surgery, and you have to do this as a necessary evil. But if you notice the anesthetic, then something's probably gone wrong. It should be, oh, I had my surgery. What about the anesthesia? Oh, I don't remember it. That's the ideal outcome. So a lot of pressure, a lot of complexity, a lot of challenge, right? And anyhow, it was not easy to get into. It was not a falling off a log specialty to get into.
But you were like, I'm in.
And they're like, hey, would you like to do this job? And I thought, I'll try it for a year. That was my thinking. I'll try it for a year. And so I said, sure. I mean, it might be different. Might be interesting. It was just curiosity. And it turns out the fish met the water. So I loved it. It was really fun.
What did you love about it?
It's physiology, but in real life. So all of the complex systems, all the biochemistry, all the things that I had studied, all came to bear in. Listen, it was just like I said, it's everything. So sometimes it would be the simplest surgery is a trigger finger release. So trigger finger is where you've got a tendon that's got a little bump in it and it gets stuck underneath the retinaculum. And you have to straighten out your finger. And so they make the tiniest little incision and they clean up that tendon, and it's all done with either a block or local. It's the simplest operation. So that's one end. And the other is replacing the aortic arch. So circulatory arrest, ice bags on the head, blood going through a machine, replacing all the blood vessels that come off of the heart with surgery, and everything in between. So it was super interesting, challenging, fun, hard, dangerous, literally life and death.
And anesthesia puts you out.
Yeah, or puts part of you out. I mean, sometimes it's just making your arm numb.
So what are the drugs?
Something so you don't care.
Yeah, what are the drugs that they use in anesthesia?
So the two things you want is for it not to hurt and for you not to remember. Those are the two main ingredients. Can't hurt and you don't care. I suppose it's okay if you remember, but if you feel like, oh, they're fixing my wrist and you don't care, that's okay.
Right.
Take away, so anxiolysis, taking away anxiety, and also taking away pain. because the cutting hurts or the electrocautery hurts. That's what you have to do. But then it gets complicated from there, because if you're opening the abdomen for something as simple as fixing appendicitis, then you don't want the person's abdominal muscles to contract. So you give them a medicine like curare so the muscles relax. But then you've got to take over breathing. So each thing you do
You have to medicate.
help, you've got to manage the complications of, and it can get quite complicated. So
it's amazing
it's
what
fun.
humanity has figured out in terms of these combinations.
The greatest advance in golf is the lawnmower, and the greatest advance in surgery is anesthesia. So without it, you couldn't. Now the surgeons get mad when you say that, but they have to concede that you don't have a case unless you can get the patient calm and not have pain, and ideally not remember. Nobody wants to participate in their own appendectomy.
So what's your life like when you start becoming a practicing anesthesiologist?
It's great, actually. It's great. So up early, because all that prep setup happens before the day starts. Surgery start time is usually 7 a.m. Cut time might be 7:30. Cut time is the movie starts, but there's all this movie making before the movie comes on. Meeting the patients, talking with. One of the for me still one of the best experiences as an anesthesiologist is doing pediatric anesthesia. Something as simple as tubes in the ears, right? Very simple operation, unless it's your kid.
Right. My daughter had tubes in the ears.
Yeah.
It was very scary.
It's very scary, right? And doesn't even make sense what they're saying. You have to take it, right? So you have this experience.
Yes.
You have to take it on. She'll be okay, right?
Why are we
doing this? Well, 3 times of antibiotics, it's not working.
Right.
You risk damaging the hearing bones.
Right.
And it's a very safe, simple operation, except you're handing over your child. And so that experience of connecting with the parents, and it's not conveyed just in the words. They need to know that you know what you're doing, but it's that you're going to safely escort their 6-month-old or 1-year-old from perfectly healthy, except for this annoying ear problem, to perfectly healthy on the other side. And the awesome responsibility of that, and the
trust.
Yeah, it's for me, that's the best part. And that's a roundabout way of answering your question about pain management. So as much fun as all the hard OR cases were, the talking to the patients part was much more interesting for me. It was the phone calls the night before for elective cases. It was the visits with the family in the ICU before we took someone back. And then eventually, once I got into pain management, it's all that, right? It's the sad, hopeless cases of bone salad and 10 different medicines and nothing works, and figuring out a way to help get the patient some relief, but more importantly, to get them some hope. And that's what I got hooked on, was as exciting and fun and cool as going up on the roof and meeting the helicopter for a, big rollover crash. Or I was in the hospital one time when the prison was shot up. There was a riot in the prison yard, and the guards shot people in the prison, so that we had 15 casualties come in all at once. So it was very exciting. But the best stuff was the human connection, was actually talking to people, not talking to the tops of their heads.
That was the most rewarding work.
Yeah.
When did you
get
married?
I started doing more and more pain medicine. Ultimately, I did a fellowship in pain medicine. So I spent another 1.5 years just on
relieving pain.
Yes.
And had you started your family at that point?
Yes, I had. So I'm sober. I have a son.
But did you get sober?
Yeah. So it's let me disentangle it.
Thank you.
So I went to residency. I developed a curiosity about fentanyl right about the time that I had figured out how to do anesthesia. So I'm like, okay, I got this. And I don't know. It's with a long time since, I don't have any more clarity about it. It still doesn't make sense to me why I would do this. It does. There's a piece of this that still feels alien and Well, I don't know why you did that. I still don't know. Another way to explain it is so that I could get here, so that I could have this beautiful life, so that I could have, right? All this stuff makes sense in hindsight, but on the front end of it, I still don't have a good explanation for why I tried fentanyl the first time.
But in that situation, you're doing anesthesiology or you're doing pain management or both?
Anesthesia.
Okay. So
I maybe did a month of pain medicine in there somewhere.
and this is way before this fentanyl epidemic.
Oh, yeah.
Fentanyl is only being used to
Yeah.
manage ridiculous pain.
1999.
Okay.
Yeah. So for the little, remember the VH1 where they would have the little blurbs at the bottom and explain. So fentanyl
Pop-up video.
Pop-up video is 80 times stronger than morphine. And that just means you need less of it. That's all. You just need less of it.
When you're giving people fentanyl, how are you? You're usually putting them on an IV?
Yeah, so fentanyl's pain medicine, and it's usually given when we were giving it. It was given IV because we had IVs in just about everybody for surgery, and it was developed because it is very strong, very reliable, very short-acting pain medicine. So classic use for fentanyl is if you had a broken bone and the orthopedist was going to set the bone by pulling on it and getting it in alignment and then casting it. That's like the classic use for fentanyl. So something really, really painful, but very brief because you want it to wear off and go away. Morphine lasts a lot longer.
Fentanyl's quick. It does, as drug addicts like to say, it doesn't have legs.
Doesn't have legs.
So when you're a doctor in this world, when's the first time you take fentanyl and how do you take it?
So the first time I took fentanyl was I was in residency, and I mean it's a whole elaborate thing. I remember being curious. I remember thinking it was going to help manage my stress at work at a job that I actually liked, but was hard, but also it's this marriage of curiosity and also it's stressful. As much as I say how much I liked it, it was, it's challenging. It's long hours. It's complicated stuff. We were shorthanded. We never filled the residency. I wound up doing a lot of stuff essentially on my own because there just weren't enough. There weren't enough people. There weren't enough staff. Staff were leaving to go take jobs in the community. We were running a skeleton crew basically at the hospital. And so as fun as it was also hard. And I think I had explained to myself that I was going to try this. I was just going to see what it was like. That's how I explained it to myself. Well,
as your ex-rude boy mod, drinking, amphetamine taking, smoking weed persona, had you taken opiates back then?
I one time got I think it was a joint or something that had opium in it. And so I remember that experience from way, way, way back.
So you see the fentanyl and you know everything there is to know about it. Like
more. I should have known so much that I ran away from it, but I thought I knew so much that I could manage it.
Well, we all think that in some way or another.
It turns out it had nothing to do with all the anesthesia training. It's just standard junkie thinking. It's just standard.
That's the best part.
Regular, like, oh, this isn't junkie thinking. This is anesthesia thinking. But it was the same. It was. In the years since, I recognized that there was nothing special about the way I understood why this was going to be okay, how I had justified it.
But experientially, you're a doctor in the thing, and do you eat it? Like, do you steal it? Like, tell us everything you do. You shoot it?
Oh yeah, of course.
So tell us.
Remember, I'm like a master cannulator of veins and so forth. So,
cannulator?
Yes.
What is a cannulator?
Cannula is the little catheter that the cannulation is when you access the vein.
So prior to this, had you done IV drugs?
No.
So tell me the whole story as graphically as you can, please. Now we're getting somewhere.
So
forget about the imposters. Let's get it.
Well, there's this debate in my head about whether or not. So
you strike me as very Bruce Banner-esque somehow, experimenting on yourself.
Yes.
But keep going.
Yes, maybe. Yes. And It's accidental overdose of fentanyl radiation.
Yes.
Yeah. So, the way I get it is with deceptive record keeping. So we would check out a box of drugs for the day from the pharmacy. Based on, it was sort of standard kit would cover just about every kind of case you were going to do. Occasionally you would need more of something depending on the case, or you would need something weird or special depending on the case. So you'd ask for it from the pharmacy at the beginning of the day. But in general, there was a standard kit, and it had things to knock a patient out. These are all narcotics. It's a narcotic kit. So things to knock out a patient, things for pain management, things to make them less anxious, something called Versed, which is like IV Valium, etc., is in this kit. And you keep track of every dose you give to the patient. This is in the days of written records before digital computer records. So you keep track of every dose you give, and then there's a total at the end, and then you have leftover, whatever the leftover is. If it ends exactly like this glass of water, if I finish the glass of water, that's one glass of water. But if I didn't use it all, I would return this, but in a syringe. And then the pharmacist checks it, makes sure it's what it says it is, and then signs off, and that's that. So I do this for years until one day I decide that I'm going to edit the record and say that I did something that I didn't do. This is the end of the day.
And it's easy enough to do that.
It's easy enough.
Sure, like I can write that I used the whole glass of water and keep the rest of the water for myself.
Who's going to know, right? It's
and was there any part of you that was like, this is a fascinating experiment? Or were you like, I want to be high?
No, it's a fascinating experiment. And I just took a small amount.
Perhaps this can help manage my stress at work.
This may be the thing I'm looking for. So at that point, I knew drinking wasn't going to work to manage my stress. I had enough experience with it to know I couldn't be hungover. It lasted too long, kept me awake. Alcohol's no good. Marijuana I had tried, and I felt stupid and slow and tired, and that wasn't going to work either because I was too
altered.
I needed to feel sharp for what I was doing. I hate the feeling of being slow and dumb. And so I'd figured this out, that I wanted something that lasted just a little while, that in case of emergency, I could break glass when the vials are glass. And so I set aside an extra 2 milliliters, which is not very much, of fentanyl. And if this were an experiment, if this were just a high velocity hard charging, then I would have just taken a syringe and used it. But what I did was I carried it around for more than a month.
Without doing
it. Because I knew that doing it, being on the other side of that, was going to change things. I had a strong sense that I was not going to come out of this the way I went into it.
So you knew that.
Yeah, this was Darwin on the voyage to the Galapagos, right? So you could be killed, you could make great discoveries, but I was not going to come out the same. And
which is probably attractive and scary.
Both. And there's something about being at that decision point. So there's a scene in a movie, Heat. Do you ever see that movie?
Yes.
Michael Mann. And there's a scene when it's Robert De Niro, and he's got all the money. The girl's waiting for him. They're going to get on the plane. They're going to go. He wins, and he's headed to the LAX, and he's going down, and there's I think it's La Tijera or something like that, and he's deciding whether or not he's going to go get this Waingro, this guy who messed him up in the beginning, and get even, right? Or he goes on, and that dithering as he's maybe pulling off the off-ramp or maybe staying on the highway. And I was in that space for a long time.
With if you're going to use or not.
Yes.
You really loved Heat, huh?
It was a great movie. Yeah, great movie. So that was me in the car, but the car drove for like a month of should I, shouldn't I, whatever.
And you knew as soon as you did it, you were going to be changed.
Paperwork's done. All I have to do is throw it away. All I have to do is drop it in a Sharps container. And this could be a story that I'm telling my friend Dave. I'm like, hey, years ago, I set aside some fentanyl, but I never used it. That could have been how the story went.
Totally.
But instead, I got curious. I took it home. I got a syringe. I did it all exactly, meticulous sterile technique. And
what does the sterile meticulous technique entail?
You want to make sure you don't, you want to clean the skin, make sure that you don't give yourself an infection. You want to have clean needle, clean syringe, clean everything. Sterile technique, meaning you don't touch anything that isn't sterile in the process of drawing it up or administering it. And yeah. And
tiny shots,
2 cc's. The whole thing is two
2
milliliters, and tiny shots, tiny needles, 27 gauge needle.
I always used like a 27, 28
Eventually I
gauge
moved
needle.
to a 30.
Yeah.
30 gauge needles are ophthalmologic needles. They're extremely fine, finer than a hair. And the problem is they're so skinny, they're very difficult, even with...
Do you need to pull the blood back into you with those?
You don't have to.
Did you?
No, just
Okay.
if you do it right, the flash is there without pulling
You
anything.
see it. You see the little, okay.
Yeah. All it has to do is
show.
just to see it in the hub. All I have to
Right.
see is that's how you know you're in. No, you don't have to pull.
And how in love how quickly does it take for you to fall in love?
I don't do it again for another 6 weeks. So that dithering before has turned into the dithering after. And now I know, right now I can
What was
say,
the first time like? Was it love?
Yeah, it was great. It was amazing. Yeah. Warm, confident, relief.
We don't want to promote drugs on here, doctor. I'm just kidding. Keep going.
Yeah. And then it ended, and now I've got this massive secret. I've got this big secret.
Betrayal.
All of it. Yeah. Betraying all the people who had trusted me and my profession and all I worked for, and just jeopardizing it. So there's this huge sense for me. I felt guilty and ashamed and bad and powerful and secretive and
High.
yeah. If I could have tossed it and never used it, now I could just keep this secret and never have to share it. I don't have to say anything. So anyhow, at the end of 6 weeks, curiosity or drive or addiction or whatever it was got the best of me. And I thought, well, look, this sounds retarded now at this point, but I've proven to myself that I can handle this.
Because you did it once.
Well, I did it, but I held on to it I didn't just dive into it headlong. And then look, I didn't do it again for, half a quarter and nothing happened. So I diagnosed myself as not having, this is the guy using injectable opiates, although only once. I diagnosed myself as not having a problem.
Well, it's interesting because you knew your dad had a problem. You knew what a problem looked like.
Yes.
You didn't consider the hereditary potential. You shoot it once, you survive. You don't run to shoot it again. You love it, but you're like, I'm going to give it a minute. And then the second you feel like the coast is clear, you're like, I'm going to do it again.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's work this in a careful way to manage my feelings of whatever.
What are the feelings?
Stress. I'm so special. The rules don't apply to me.
Just the classic ism shit.
Just read any of the stories.
Right.
Yeah, it's the same.
Right.
Go to any meeting or talk to that friend who who needs to get sober. He sounds like me back then, and
life?
I can handle it. I can handle it. Right. I can handle it. And it's a very interesting thing about alcoholics is that we prove that we don't need to drink by drinking. Look, I can take it or leave it. Watch. And then we drink, right? And there was the same thing. I was thinking, I'm going to use this. That's how you know it's not out of hand.
Are you using anything else with it?
Well, at that point, no. As I got more into it, no. But then once the wheels started to rattle on the shopping cart, then I got even more curious about the rest of the shit.
What would this be like if I smoked a cigarette after I shot this?
What it would be like if I used the rest of the drugs in the drawer.
So what else are you putting in there?
Pretty much everything. Nothing, not at the same time. This is
no concoctions, all separate doses. So what are you shooting? Like, what What do you get to experiment with at this stage of your career?
Oh, let's see. The hypnotics, they're called. So that's the thing you give to knock somebody out for the beginning of the case.
That's like the
just
propofol kind of thing?
Propofol, pentothal.
Is pentothal truth serum?
Yes.
How does that work?
If you give enough to knock a person out so that you can do the rest of the anesthetic, putting the breathing tube in, which is very stimulating, then it's not true serum because they're just out. Theoretically, it's like drinking. So it works almost on the same receptor. If you give somebody some pentothal where they're still conscious, theoretically, their inhibitions drop. So they loosen up and maybe.
But do you think they actually tell the truth in that situation? No. So it's
vino bullshit, right? It's not veritas.
Right.
It's both. People are more loquacious when they're drinking or on sedatives, but they also make up stuff and they're more unreliable. So
as you
I don't think so. I think the lasso that Wonder Woman used, that's
the real thing.
Works.
That's the real thing.
That definitely works.
So as you raid the cachet of your toolbox, what are you loving? What are you not loving?
Well, I hate ketamine and
why? Everyone loves ketamine.
It's the worst.
Why do you hate it so much?
It feels like balled up cellophane. Feels like you're the cellophane that's been balled up, scratchy, bent. Awful. It was a terrible sound, terrible sensations.
Does it shock you how everybody loves it?
Yeah, I don't get it. I don't get why people like it. It's definitely was not my cup of tea.
And we'll circle back on the benefits of ketamine for trauma.
Yeah, I've seen people use it. I've seen people have good results. We talk about it. But for me, it's not a gateway anywhere.
So what else?
I tried everything.
What
else? I tried adrenaline.
How's that? How's the adrenaline?
Scary.
How's the adrenaline fentanyl speedball?
I didn't try. Remember, I did these are individual things. I'm not doing these things together. So they're.
Are you taking notes? Are you like?
Yes.
Are you insane at that point?
Probably.
What's shooting adrenaline like?
Just fear. It's just having fear. Yeah.
That's so crazy.
Yeah. And so these chemical substitutes for feelings, whether it's the relaxation that comes from Versed, which is that IV Valium cousin, but short acting, or the opiates. Opiates are classified as pain medicine, but they're not really pain medicine. They're suffering medicine. So they're not great at relieving pain, but they are great at making you not care.
What's good at relieving pain?
Local anesthetic. So lidocaine.
Is adrenaline?
Which I don't recommend shooting.
Why?
You just feel weird. You just feel.
You shot everything.
Yeah.
Would you classify adrenaline as some kind of stimulant, like super stimulant?
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely, so released in the adrenal cortex. It's the fight, flight, or freeze chemical. It has all sorts of physiologic effects, makes your muscles stronger, makes you sweat, turns off your gastrointestinal tract, turns off your salivary glands, changes your focus so that you're focused far. And it also gives the feeling of being anxious. It's the feeling of anxiety.
Well, we produce adrenaline under duress.
We should.
So
Yeah,
what is synthetic adrenaline?
It's adrenaline.
Where do they get it from?
Epinephrine. It used to be extracted, but now it's made. It's made synthetic. There's a chemical reaction to produce it.
That's incredible.
Like Tylenol.
Where did they used to extract it from?
The adrenal glands
of a human.
No, not humans. I think pigs is where they used to get it from.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
All right.
Hitler was on that stuff.
Adrenaline.
Yeah.
That was his drug of choice?
Yeah, no. His drug of choice was
amphetamine.
Opiates and amphetamines.
What were the opiates that he was using?
He was using oxycodone and sometimes morphine, sometimes when they ran out of the synthetic stuff. There's a great book on it called Blitzed, if you want to read about it. It's basically the private journals of his Candyman, and that reading that's I think Ofer, is it Norm Ofer wrote it, and it's that book for me changed my understanding of the whole Nazi regime, and just it if you want to go on a very interesting trip, read that book with all of what you know. You're an expert in this field too. With all of what you know about the descent of a junkie into madness and doubling down and so forth, and then you look at the things that he did toward the end, it's perfectly explainable by being a
insane drug addict.
late stage insane drug addict,
shooting adrenaline,
psychosis, yeah,
right,
etc. It was amphetamines. He was on I think I forgot which one, Dexedrine, I think. But,
and were you shooting stimulants also in that period?
Cocaine, tried that.
The pharmaceutical coke.
Yeah.
Was it pink?
No, it was liquid.
It was liquid.
Liquid in a brown.
Everything was
brown
liquid.
vial. Yeah, everything's liquid. Yeah.
Amazing.
4%. Yeah.
So tell us what happens to your career, your personal life. Do people find out? Like, what's going on? Tell us the whole thing.
Well,
and thank you for coming here. I think I was getting caught up in all these street junkies, and I think I needed the real thing.
Fortunately, I had a rule that I luckily didn't break, which was I wasn't high while I took care of patients. That was like the line in the sand, or the red line.
And you didn't break it, no matter what.
No.
That's incredible too.
With that said, doesn't mean I was in my right mind. So a typical day for me at the end was I'd gone overnight without using anything. So my pattern was to use at the end of the day. So it started out with once, and then again, and then a couple of weeks later, and then a week later, and then a couple times that next week, and then daily. And then this was going to start to encroach. So I said, okay, only after work. And what that meant was I was kicking all day, waiting until 6 o'clock or whenever, till the day was over. And in the beginning, it was to get high, but toward the end, it wasn't even that.
It was just to
be a little less sick. Yeah.
Would you have been better off with your patients using, so you weren't in withdrawal?
Probably. I mean, there's a legendary story of probably the most famous opiate addict surgeon is Dr. Holstead at Johns Hopkins, and he was certainly high for the last 25 years of his career. He was here at Bellevue, sort of father of all kinds of surgery, neurosurgery and so forth. A genius surgeon, invented rubber gloves with his nurse. I mean, just like a legend. Developed a cocaine addiction as he was mapping out the peripheral nerves. He would inject himself with cocaine. Again, science, trying to figure out where to block a nerve so he could do surgery on the extremity, on the arm or the leg. There's letters with him and Freud. Freud was his dealer, essentially, of cocaine to get all the cocaine. Then finally, Freud's pissed that all this stuff is coming here. May have been something else going on. In any case,
wait, what was Freud angry about?
That all the cocaine was being shipped out of Germany to
Dr. Holstead.
To Dr. Holstead, yeah, to John Holstead. So, in any case, Holstead, from all those experiments or whatever, wound up on cocaine, wound up cocaine dependent. And then he used heroin to get off of cocaine, which works. But now you've got a heroin problem. He was P&G in New York. They started a new school down in Baltimore, and his friend Osler convinced him to come down there for a fresh start. We know now Osler knew that Halstead was on the needle, and he was until he died, ironically, of a gallbladder infection later, even though he invented that surgery. But so probably, but
probably you would have been better off.
Yeah, maybe
using.
But heroin and fentanyl are very different. Legs is the issue. So heroin is something that you can reach a relatively steady state with. Fentanyl is very difficult to reach a steady state. So it's, up and down, and you use it. It's hard to gauge, especially if you're measuring it yourself. What's enough? What's too much? So
was there?
I don't want to give the impression that it would have been better if I don't think that's true. but it's not what happened. What happened is I'm like trying to hold it together, get through the day, and I thought I was clever. I thought I was, getting by. There's a gown that the surgeons wear, right? You see, they put the gown on and then they put their gloves on and the nurse ties the gown in the back and they do surgery. And those gowns are sterile for the purposes of the surgery. And they're in these packages. And I would take open one of those and put it on backwards, but like a robe. So it's open in the front. And a lot of anesthesiologists do this, but I had one on all the time because by that point, despite being careful, I had bruises and infections and my arms looked terrible from injecting myself all the time. And so I wore the gown all the way down to here. And it also covered up how skinny I was getting and how sweaty I was all the time because I was in withdrawal. And I can't eat anything because I'm nauseated. And so I'm losing weight and I'm scrawny and I'm hyper-focused all day long because I don't want anyone to catch me. And I just have to not use. All I have to do is not use for maybe a day or two. And then I'll be past the worst of it. Fentanyl withdrawal is
much
horrible
quicker.
for like day 2 and 3. And that's all I got to do, but I can't do it. I keep not being able to do it. And until one day the same routine, not going to do it. Then I did it. And I still feel bad at that point. I'm way below zero. I'm not getting back up to the surface of feeling okay. And I've pulled off at the exit before my house, away from the hospital. And I get a page we had pagers, and the pager codes used to be 4 and the number 4 dash and then 4 numbers and then 4 more dash and then 4 more numbers. So it was 9 numbers, and the first 5 numbers are the number to call. 4 means 734. That's a hospital exchange. And then the last 4 numbers are the pager number of the person who paged you. And if you and I were working together all the time, it'd be like, 66782, that's Dave. Dave wants me to call back at this number. And I'd get it to a phone, or I think I had a phone at that time. And like, Dave, what's up? Or I'm looking for Dave. And the nurse would say, Dave, somebody, it's Dr. Giles. And that's how you'd call somebody back. So I get this page. It's to the hospital, which is not that unusual, even though I'm done for the day, but it's not that unusual to be asked about something. And the 4 digits after it, I don't recognize. It's not somebody that I'm working with. So we had these name tags that clip to our collars and these laminated cards with all the names and 4-digit pager codes for everybody. So if I need to get a hold of you, I'd go, where's Dave? Oh, here's his number. And that's how I'd page you. And I'm trying to figure out who paged me. And I'm looking, and it's none of the residents, and it's none of the surgery residents, and could it be faculty? So I look on the faculty card, and it's nobody until I get to the chairman.
Oh, no.
The chairman of the department has paged me, and I've never got a page from him. That's why I didn't know his pager number. So the gig is up, and I call. Well, hi, Dr. Moore. And he's an Irish, Australian guy. And he says, how you doing? And I'm not doing all right. I'm by myself. I'm in the car. He says, just calling you up because I'm not going to try and do an Australian accent because there's a large amount of fentanyl missing from the department. Not saying you took it, but so long as it's all back by tonight, then there are no problems. And I had gotten away with it for so long that I thought no one was checking.
Right.
I imagined there was like at the CVS when the receipts are running out of the you've bought something and they give you all those coupons. That's what I thought it was, just this big thing with a coil of no one's ever going to go through that. Or at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark where they're putting the Ark away. I thought, well, it's in there somewhere. But well, it turns out that they did an audit and they looked at my fentanyl usage, and it was about 3 times the average. Right. So I said, can I come talk to you? And he said, I was hoping you would say that. So I drove to his house, and he said, I'm so glad you came over. A couple of years before you came here, we had another resident who I found dead in the call room. It's an occupational hazard of the specialty. We get wrapped up in these things sometimes. I've lost a friend besides, and I've been worried about you. And I'm going to have you contact these people, and they're going to help you. And when they say you're all better, I want you to come back here, and I want you to stay here and be part of the faculty. I'm like in withdrawal, worst day of my life. He's telling me this. I didn't believe him, by the way. I thought that was just like nice
Set
things.
up.
Yeah, nice things you say so I don't fight or cause a scene. And he asked me if I was all right to go home, and I was, and I went home. And the next day I called, and it was exactly as he said. It was literally, condensing, but it was exactly as he said. They said, yeah, we're waiting for your call. And I reached out to what was then the state diversion board in California, which is for doctors that get in trouble. And I was a voluntary admission, and they were glad to have me. And then they set up this great big program for me, which involved treatment and so forth. But the most important thing, at least for the program, was it was a 5-year program. So 5 years of showing up, meetings, group, and drug testing. And I think if you have to live your life sober with nothing and prove it for 5 years, changes will happen. It's just, I went through so much. I went through getting married. I went through starting a family. I went through going back to the hospital. I went back to the OR. I did all these things, all sober, and my sense of myself changed in that time. So that's the end of the story. Was not me dead in a call room. It was getting a page from the chairman.
Before the chairman reaches out to you, were you like, I'm in trouble here? Or were you like, this is working out okay?
No, I knew something bad was going to happen. I knew something bad.
How long was the run for?
A few months, 6 months maybe.
And you were doing all sorts of basically experiments on yourself with the highest level.
Here and there. Some of those experiments were driven by ran out of fentanyl. Let's try something else. That was a particularly bad crisis to find oneself in. I'll try something else. And of course, the opiate receptor is unique. And if adrenaline worked on the opiate receptor, then that's how we detox people
right.
with epinephrine. But it doesn't. Nothing worked, and nothing worked to distract me. And most of that experimentation happened early. By the time I was waiting for the day to end, I wasn't experimenting with other stuff. I'd already crossed those things off the list.
Had there been pharmaceutical heroin on hand?
No.
Dilaudid?
No. Yeah, Dilaudid's okay.
But you really preferred fentanyl to everything.
Yeah, sufentanil is actually even better. But extremely narrow therapeutic window, like really dangerous. So fentanyl is 80 times stronger than morphine. Sufentanil is about maybe 20 times stronger than that. So multiply those two together, and really short acting. So that's the kind of,
you're in and out pretty fast.
Yeah, it's like bungee jumping in a volcano, though. So you might not spring back out.
So this Australian chairman saves your life, basically.
Definitely.
And this program, does it contain a detox and rehab component, or it's just sort of built in?
Yes, you're supposed to go off to treatment, but I didn't have any money because I was a resident, and I also went through a weird period where I thought, well, maybe the problem happened when I went to do this residency. So maybe like the listeners thought at the beginning, maybe this guy shouldn't be in anesthesia, and that's the real problem. And then I started thinking, well, maybe I shouldn't be in medicine at all. I had a real, crisis of identity. And I thought about just walking away from all of it, walking away from medicine. I wasn't ready to go into the program yet. So there's this little period of time in there after the okay, well, why don't you take some time? So I left residency. But before I jumped in both feet into the, that was, I don't know, a few weeks, 2-3 weeks, something like that. It was like, I don't know, if I bumped into you, I'd say, well, what do you think, Dave? What should I do? And I'm like, I don't know. So there's a lot of that going on. And the main consequence of that was that detox for me was just me. There was no help. There was no pharmacologic help, no medical assistance. It was cold turkey, as they say.
But the fentanyl, it seems like, is a quick detox anyway.
Yeah, at that point, I was using somewhere between 2 and 3 milligrams a day, which is a massive amount of fentanyl. And so it was rough.
Those 3 days. Does it linger after that? Because I have a friend who just kicked fentanyl.
It's like a week of feeling bad. The middle piece of the week is especially bad. And then the insomnia was the killer. So that was like that lasted a long time.
How long did it last?
6 months.
Yeah. And in that period, it's also like your job obviously provided you with the means to take your drug of choice.
Yeah, I suppose I could have looked for it on the open market, or I could have.
Well, if you had, there's
written myself a prescription for it,
right?
But that would have been this. Just, throwing stupid on top of stupid. There was no. That was not going to work.
Those are the lines that we cross that make it so you aren't the board certified addictionologist at Aura right now.
It would have been way too expensive, and for what? For 30 perks lasting an afternoon.
Or you start going down to the Tenderloin and buying tar or whatever. You know what I mean? Like that's what most of the dopey stories.
Getting your arm chopped off because of the infection. Yeah. No, I fortunately snapped back to reality in that there was no more I knew, and I never did it again. There was no more using after that was gonna pay off. That was not gonna work.
Did you see any parallel between you and your father at that point?
No,
never.
No.
When did you start?
Way later.
When did you start to see it?
Well, remember, I don't think I said this, but I was definitely not going to be an alcoholic. I remember making a conscious decision. I know what that is. I'm not going to be an alcoholic, and that's maybe why I wound up with opiates, but it's the same. It's just a much faster, more concentrated, more intense journey, which ultimately turned out to be good because it cut 20 years off of the development of recognizing I had a problem. So that worked out good. Yes, of course. And in afterwards, holy crap, this is right. I did the same thing, chasing the same thing. And you get into the weeds and is that part of it? Was he trying to understand his dad by going?
It's irrelevant.
I certainly never thought that at the time. I never thought, wonder why he abandoned us that way. But no, I of course. And that's so that's one of the most interesting things about this problem is how copy paste in many ways the stories are. And at the top of it, you talk about board certified. Board certified is not the interesting part. The interesting part is this. Wait, you know better and you still did this?
You didn't really know. You sort of knew better then. You didn't know better enough. You were still a kid too. You were a kid.
In my 20s.
You had all this stuff at your fingertips. And then the question, it's one of these kind of questions that we can never answer. Were we drug addicts and alcoholics before we picked up a drug or alcohol?
Right.
So you're in this situation where you have everything at your fingertips. You happen to be a fentanyl addict. You just don't really know it yet.
Yes.
And you're experimental and it happened that way. I'm curious because you did get sober or stayed sober through Alcoholics Anonymous, right?
Yeah. So in that period where I'm in the bathtub until I stop shivering and then stand up and open the window until I'm freezing, and that detox, the bathtub detox, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. So I called another doctor who I knew was sober. And I said, I don't know what to do. He said, well, why don't you come to a meeting? Which is like throwing water on the witch. I mean, I did not want to do that, but I had no better ideas. And I recognized that I landed myself in this situation that I was going to need some other perspective. So I went, I'd gone through the worst of detox. So I was a few days sober, and I went to this meeting, and it was all doctors, which helped, by the way.
Was it a special doctor's meeting?
I don't think so. I don't think it was. It was in Sacramento, California, where I went to school and where I was living. I don't think so. It just happened to be, and I don't know. I should ask Craig now. That's a good question. They may have put it together for me. I'm not sure. I don't know. All I know is I went in there to not say anything and just to have gone so that I could say that I went, and it was 6 other doctors. So that helps. But I don't like doctor meetings in general because they get off track and into stuff that's not really the language of the heart oftentimes. But in this meeting, I'm dividing up the time by how many guys are there. I'm going to pass or say nothing. And wasn't Craig, but this other guy, anesthesiologist, ironically, said, "We've all heard our stories. Why don't you lead the meeting?" And so I led the meeting in that group of guys, and they listened and they made me feel safe. And then they told their stories, and they're very similar to my story. The anesthesiologist is almost identical story. And I started to feel like, okay, maybe I'm not the only one, because I sure felt like I was, even with what Dr. Moore had said about somebody dead in the call room, and we've been through this before, and I thought that was a story. I realized that I was not the only one. And that gave me an enormous sense of hope that somebody else had been through this before. So I was not the first one. Well, come to realize I'm as unique as ham and eggs. I mean, the salacious bits of a ketamine, and that's sort of interesting, but the feelings and the feeling cornered and the doubling down on self-destructive, stupid shit that is just made things worse. Well, that turns out to be just like
everybody.
Garden variety.
Sure.
Yeah, nothing special about that. Anyhow, I heard this in this meeting, and at the end of it, I felt a little bit less bad, maybe better, maybe. And they said, "Well, why don't you come back tomorrow? We're in a different group, and we're meeting over here, and there's other guys." And I went, and that's where it started. And I began to hear different things because I'd been to meetings. I went to my first meeting when I was 5 with my dad, and so that's what I thought this place was. But I started to listen. I started to pay attention to what was going on, and they welcomed me, and nobody else was. I mean, everyone I knew at the hospital, all of my friends there were shunning me. My poor girlfriend was also in residency in surgery, and so she stayed at the hospital, and so she caught all of the
flack.
Wow, what happened? She was dealing with that. That's horrible for her, and so I'm non grata anywhere else except in this room where I'm like the new guy, and they want to. AA is great. I mean, they're very, very encouraging. Then there was a meeting around the corner from where I lived, and I just started going, and I just kept going, and I felt better. And then I said something stupid, which I thought was a low risk bet. I said, "Well, I'll keep going if this keeps working." Because I thought it's not, I mean, I feel better now because of whatever. Well, here we are, almost 26 years later, and I still go, I still find comfort and support and solace and sobriety.
Well, also like what you said before about the primary purpose is you go to help somebody else.
Yeah, not at first. I mean, at first I was
going
to
26 years later, it's like you go to help somebody else.
It's not usually my first thought. I'm not usually driving over thinking, all right, I'm going to help somebody today. I'm thinking, God damn it, whatever's on my mind, whatever's upsetting me. And then I oh, that's right. We're here to focus on recovery. Oh, now my little problems don't seem that. I'll say this about meetings. And I know that not everybody listening to this is into them, and that's okay. I've never left a meeting wanting to trade problems with someone. So on the way in, I'm burdened by whatever's crushing me in my life. And when I leave, I'm like, oh, well, actually, it's not that bad. So for me, I still get relief from going.
Was it weird to say you were an alcoholic?
Yes, that was very weird.
Were you resistant? Like, was it hard to get those words out of your mouth?
Yeah, there was a guy in the meeting. Who there's always an irritating pain in the ass, and if you go to meetings long enough, and there's a guy in there who would say, "I'm JT." That was his name. He says, "I'm JT, and I choose sobriety."
Yeah.
And the old timers in there, they'd all get pissed off,
Right.
just say you're a
Right.
fucking alcoholic, right? And I get it, and everyone's got to be a little bit different. And I thought, yeah, that sounds good, but I never introduced myself that way because I wanted to fit in. I just wanted to move along and fit in. And there's an evolution of saying I'm an alcoholic to understanding it to embracing it. Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
I get that.
Yeah.
And at what point were you like, maybe I could actually help some people who suffer from what I suffer from?
That happened to me when I was in treatment. So 3 months after I get sober, I go to treatment because it's part of the requirements for this program. And in treatment, it was mostly almost all doctors, couple of lawyers, one Teamster who had great insurance, and was a heroin guy. He was a welder, and I was there in January, and we learned from Tom that he would relapse right after Christmas and go to rehab for a month or two every winter because he was a welder in Buffalo. And so he would go where it was warm.
Sure.
It was not warm where I was in Portland, but it was nicer than Buffalo, near Portland, Oregon. And they had something called feedback group. And feedback group was, there's a script that you would see somebody doing something that looked like addictive related behavior or something that was, heading toward problems. And I would say, Dave, when I see you making fists when Eddie talks, I feel anxious because it looks like you're rejecting what he's saying. And I worry that that's a step to you toward relapse. Something like that. It's corny, but it was more sophisticated. And we had a list of feeling words because we're all shitty at saying I feel sad or I feel angry. Everyone's bad at that. I think I feel upset, it was all intellectualized, especially with a bunch of doctors. So we had this feedback group, and I took a shot at it. I saw something that was very clear to me, and a guy I liked, and I gave him some feedback. And the rule on feedback was when you received it, you couldn't say anything about it for 24 hours. You couldn't respond. All you could say was thank you. And then you'd have to sit with it for 24 hours. And so I gave this guy feedback, and I could see it landed. But then he couldn't say anything about it till the next day. So you have time to process all this airy-fairy shit. And so the next day, he came up to me. He said, I thought about what you said, and you're absolutely right. And we got to connect over it. And I said, well, I see that because I do that. I spotted, I got it right. I saw that thing in you, and that's why. And then that was Tuesday. And then on Thursday, I did it again. I tried it again, and it landed again. The next day, a thing. And I kind of got off a little bit on the accurate reflections, but you have to take a risk. If you're going to give somebody feedback, you're being honest. You're exposing yourself. You're being vulnerable to say, because that could be wrong. Maybe it doesn't mean anything what you were doing. And the more I did that, the closer I got to these guys, and the better I felt. And this weird sense of congruence happened, where I started to say and act like I felt, which I had never done before. I was always superficial and always closed, and a joke or a distraction or a intellectual thing or whatever. I wouldn't say I feel scared. I wouldn't say that, but I was saying it here, and I figured out that was a much better way. It was like at my house growing up, you would never give anyone honest feedback. It was all about distraction or class clowning or that sort of stuff. So that's when I got it.
You like found yourself.
I found what I'm supposed to do, which is that. And so I got through that, hit the gong, worked for a little while as a doc in the box, just kind of that get well job. But for get well job for a doctor is working as a, like family practice for a heart transplant guy who was working in the strip mall. And then I got married. I married that girlfriend, my hostage. She came with me, and we had a son. And then I went back to residency because I had a year left to finish. And the board said, actually, it's 2. They were I think they didn't want me to finish because I'm, what if he relapses? What if he whatever? They tried to make it extra hard. My then wife was game, and she supported us while I was doing that. She had left residency to have the baby, and then she was working while I was doing it. So we worked together. We got through that. And then I didn't ultimately go back to stay at the university and work, but I could have. I wanted to go do something else. I wound up working in further Northern California doing cardiac anesthesia, starting a pain clinic, until this old guy from a long time ago, who I'd known since I was a teenager, had started a treatment center in Malibu, and it was going under. And we were living on the north coast of California where it rains every day, and I'm working.
What was the town called?
Eureka.
Okay.
I know, and I'm working, 16, 20-hour days. I'm on call for hearts. I'm doing the pain. I'm on call for OB. I'm the new guy. So I'm doing all this stuff. About 5 or 6 years sober at the time. And I said, well, let's go check it out. Let's go see. So we go down there for a week with the kids, and it's Malibu, and it's beautiful, and it'll pay enough for me to live, not money, but enough to get by. I said, well, let's try this for 6 months. And it was the fish met the water. So all of the recovery, all the science, all the personal experience, I got to bring to bear on these people who were in the middle of struggling, detox and very, very early recovery. And I fell in love.
Well, you knew everything that they were feeling.
I did.
Which is very useful for everybody involved.
Yeah.
Because you're doing service, you're doing spiritual work, you're also making sure that they feel cared for.
Yes. I can read between the lines, and also they can too. They can see that there's zero judgment at all. There's no, I'm not looking down on them in the slightest for their foibles and why they wound up here again and so on and so forth. It's just how it goes. It's just how it goes.
Well, I'd imagine working in that capacity for as long as you have, you've seen a lot of people die.
Unfortunately, yes. Yeah. Unfortunately, for sure. And oftentimes with every reason to live.
Right. Sure.
Every reason to live. Some people, their young lives are so mangled that it's maybe understandable why whatever that original injury was or wound has not healed. And, given how that happened, or wartime or catastrophic family situations. And even those, people get better, of course, they recover. But when they don't, it's more understandable. But the people who have every reason, young kids, loving spouse, support, experience being sober, right? They put time together. They know how to do it.
And benefited from it. Helped others.
This is just one of the wacky mysteries of this thing is you don't know, you don't know. There's a paper that came out last month in the Journal of Addiction Medicine. They anonymously asked people in recovery. So to get into the study, you had to identify as a person in recovery, as defined however you want. They didn't get into the granularity on how many meetings a week, or do you have a sponsor? Or I'm in recovery, like that. And I'll ask you, what percentage of people who are in recovery are sober? And by that, I mean abstinent in the prior 30 days before being asked.
I don't know. I have no, what is it sober like abstinent or sober like sober?
Sober like don't use or drink.
And it's people who identify as recovered?
I'm in recovery.
As in recovery?
Yep.
I'm terrible at these things. I'm going to say 70%.
70% are sober.
Yes.
It's 70% are not sober.
So why would they identify as being in recovery?
I think it blew me away, right? That paper blew me away. I shared it with my team.
What is that? That's just denial? It's totally living a lie?
I think our definitions are in need of adjustment.
Well, how many people, I do this stupid show and I interview people along the spectrum in so many different places, and you have somebody who says they're in recovery because they're not shooting heroin anymore.
Right.
But they're
sober from what?
Right. And that's a whole thing.
Right.
Now, when you're treating these populations of addicts and alcoholics, is there a subset that's way more problematic than anybody else, or is it just personalities?
Like what substance is the hardest to deal with?
Is that a thing or not a thing?
I think amphetamines are especially
the
difficult.
tweakers are always the worst.
Tweakers are the worst. And
why? Because they're so separated from reality. They've done so much damage to their brains.
I'll restate that. The benzo people are the worst.
Why? I was such a bad benzo person too.
Well, so maybe you can relate. So I'll tell you my explanation. You see if this fits. So when you're in withdrawal from opiates, when you're kicking heroin or fentanyl,
sure,
it has a very characteristic set of withdrawal symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
Not everyone has every one, but most people have most of them. The classics are nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, sweating, goosebumps,
cold,
feeling chills, achy bones, runny nose. Goosebumps are the one that no other withdrawal symptom has. Goosebumps are only opiates. I don't know anyone in the history of anyone who took heroin for goosebumps. I don't know anyone who took heroin for feeling nauseated. Now, when you're dope sick, you take it because you're dope sick, but no, it's not an anti-nausea medicine, even in medical practice.
It might be a pro-nausea. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So the point is the withdrawal symptoms of opiates are distinctive, and they're not why you took the opiate in the first place. The withdrawal symptoms for benzodiazepines are anxiety. That's the primary symptom. Now, if it gets really bad, you have hallucinations and tremors and seizures, but the persnickety early hard one is fear. So the reason you take benzos is to deal with anxiety. The withdrawal symptoms of benzos are the exact same feeling of I need a Valium, I need an Ativan, I need a Xanax.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's hard. That's one reason. The second reason is I say fingertip, but the ability to control your feelings just by taking a pill is one of the greatest breakthroughs in the history of civilization.
Right.
So until we have pressed Xanax or grapes or we can have a drink, until that time, all organisms, and especially us, we try to get to a position of safety where we weren't being eaten, and comfort where we had enough to eat, and protection from the elements, and ideally be able to reproduce. Those four things, forget it. I mean, that was probably maybe barely happening to your ancestors for a little while, enough to reproduce. And the feeling of, wow, the lions aren't eating us, or the tribe across the river, and we have enough food and I can get laid, that feeling was so rare and fleeting that it drove evolution. It's why we built the pyramids and everything else. Well, now you can pop a Xanax and get the same feeling.
Right.
Everything's cool. I've got nothing to worry about.
Yes.
Lions, what lions? And so when I say, okay, to a patient, we need to take those from you. You can't keep those with you anymore. It's not the pill. It's the feeling of being able to manage your fear. That itself is its own problem. That's different from just what's in the pill. So I think the benzo folks have it the hardest.
The fear is so pronounced.
Yes.
It's so frightening.
It's so deep.
Yeah.
It's so deep.
And
you're so used to managing. You're so used to being able to go, oh, well, I know how to deal with this.
I got on benzos.
Does that sound right?
My experience was very specific in that I got on benzos because I was on heroin and I was on weed, and I had a guy who had unlimited Klonopins, and I think I had old cameras that he wanted. So
you were trading?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So I would trade him old cameras for unlimited Klonopins.
Here's a Leica for 100
It definitely didn't have any Leicas, but my cousin gave me some metal body cameras, and I wound up trading them for Klonopins, and then I wound up on heroin, benzos and weed together, and I was in love with all of those feelings together.
Mm-hmm.
Then I started to get more. Everyone had so many benzos then
Right.
that you could trade somebody weed for a shit ton of Klonopins, or you could go to the doctor and get a shit ton of benzos. And I would,
but is this in New York?
Yeah,
before the law changed.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I had started taking benzos in New York in the late 90s.
Yeah.
And then I would run out and I would have terrible seizures. Like really crazy seizures. I would seize all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
I would seize on planes. I fell out of beds seizing. I seized in detoxes. I seized wherever I was, I would seize. And in the end, I seized in a treatment center in Los Angeles. And when I got off of benzos, I mean, every time I was always scared, no matter what. But I was scared because I was always eating. I would take huge quantities of benzos too. I would take 10 at a time. I was just 2 milligrams or Xanax, 10, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
In the end, I think I was so scared of the seizures because people had said I had done so much damage to my brain, and I never wanted to have a seizure again. So I stopped taking them. I've had Dr. Drew on the show a lot, and I always want to find these memories in my life. And he says, you will never access any memories that you made on those heightened states of benzos. Is that not true?
I'm not so sure.
What do you think about that?
Because there's alternate ways. What he's probably referring to is in the hippocampus, memory is consolidated, as they say, from short-term to long-term. And short-term memory is I tell you my phone number and you remember it and then you type it in, right? Short-term memory is also your sense perceptions that you can recall. And there's a pretty steep decay about every 11 seconds. You remember half of it. It comes off very quickly. But then there's a part of the brain called the hippocampus, which may be the center where short-term memory is then filed in long-term memory. And that's what he's talking about, because benzodiazepines interrupt that process. It's what we use in the OR with this IV Versed, which is like IV Xanax. And because it interrupts the consolidation, oftentimes patients will say, I don't even remember getting to the pre-op area because those memories have not been filed yet when they're
But will they ever get
interrupted.
filed?
Okay, so that's your question, is will I be able to get back to these things? There are other ways that the brain records information that don't all go through the hippocampus. So there's all sorts of other pathways. Sympathetic nervous system can record memories. Things that we used to think only went out are also afferent. So they also go to the brain. Things that we think were only the brain telling the body what to do. We know that those nerves can be repurposed or rerouted to go the other way. So I'm not so sure. I used to be as certain as Dr. Drew about these things. Like, well, yeah, no, it's gone. Memory's gone. But what we know, back to anesthesia, what we know from the unfortunate case of people having intraoperative awareness, where there's not enough anesthetic and they wake up, but not enough to say, hey, I'm awake. They're because they have either muscle relaxants on board or there's a breathing tube in or behind the drape and we don't see them. This happens more commonly with trauma patients where we have to keep the blood pressure up because it's so low. We can't use as much anesthetic. For example, we think the patient's not recording anything. The patient's on benzos, got benzos. There's no reason that they should be able to remember this. And yet with enough stimulus, they're aware. And then intraoperative awareness is one thing. The real killer is, or the real unpleasant thing is recall. So not, hey, I'm awake, but I remember being awake. And you guys were telling that joke about the guy running for the train and whatever.
While they were cutting my belly open.
While they were,
whatever.
Opening on my leg. And so recall after benzos tells me that patients can remember things despite taking benzos. So I'm not so sure.
Okay.
They may be in there.
I always had...
It's academic a little bit, maybe, unless there's something where you had a bag of cash and you're outside of a bank and you don't remember what happened or...
Yes. No, that never happened. No. What about kratom?
Yeah. So
do you think this age of treatment, because I feel like, and I could be wrong, lethality, deaths are down all of a sudden, correct or not?
You're talking about opiate deaths?
Yes.
Yes, they are. I was at the national meeting earlier this year in Denver, and there's a drop for the last couple of years off the peak. So it's still a catastrophe.
Right. But that heightened spot, that crazy level has been reduced. And I imagine it's because Narcan is everywhere nowadays.
I want to reframe that. If you
Help me.
if you zoom out just a little bit, so there is a drop recently in the overall number of deaths per year due to fentanyl. The fraction of overdoses involving fentanyl, so of all overdoses, how many of them had fentanyl involved is way up. It's like 80%. So you use cocaine, you overdose on cocaine. It's not just cocaine. There's fentanyl in the cocaine. Same with marijuana, same with amphetamines. Fentanyl is in everything because it's so cheap, because it's coming from China.
Marijuana, you think?
Marijuana has fentanyl in it, yes. Yes.
See, that's always a very big point of conjecture on the show. You're finding it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're sprinkling it on
I don't
weed.
know how that got in there. And these are patients, listen, you never know for sure, but my sense is the patients are telling the truth. They didn't go get fentanyl laced weed on purpose. It's just in there.
But you think it's happening.
Yeah, I've seen it. So anyhow, so the deaths attributable to fentanyl as a fraction of overdoses are higher than ever. The overall deaths compared with 10 years ago are still way up. So this lockdown / pandemic period, the peak is down. Maybe Narcan, I'm not so sure. Some say that the very vulnerable people have died. So that may be a very macabre way of looking at it. Yeah. I think I think people are using less. I think, there's less drug use. There's less drinking. There's less cigarette smoking. There's not less marijuana use, but there's less drinking. Young people are not as interested in it, or not taking it up as much as they used to. So there's an overall, as people have gone back to work, as life has returned, there's less of a drive. There's some interdiction efforts as well. It's a little bit harder to get, although not as hard as it should be. It's everywhere. It's proliferated everywhere. It's a drug that went from East Coast to West Coast, by the way, which makes it odd. Fentanyl started out here and showed up on the West Coast. So yes, good news, but I don't think that we can relax. There's still 70,000 deaths a year from overdose. So,
well, is that weird? East Coast to West Coast? I'd imagine
very unusual. Most drugs start West Coast and go east.
Really? Heroin started where?
Heroin came from Asia in the Vietnam War, and ended the Vietnam War, and landed in California first, and then made its way across the country.
Well, everyone thinks that it landed in Harlem, though. You think it got to California first? Where did it show up first?
We're talking about cheap, available.
I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm curious.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there was there's heroin in the jazz clubs and things like that, and back in the
40s,
in the 30s and the 40s and stuff. But that wasn't commercial, industrial, widespread, big manufacturer, Golden Triangle, that kind of stuff.
But you think it came from Vietnam into California before it came to Harlem and all that?
Yeah, Seattle, Oakland.
Why Seattle? Why did it
just transport across the ocean?
All right. Then the question is, and this is my theory, which is probably not a correct theory, that kratom, like a bunch of people that would have been overdosing on fentanyl got scared and started doing kratom instead and lived.
Yeah, we see that. We see people with that's probably the most common reason. There's some people who get into kratom to avoid it. There's some people who get into kratom because they don't want to go back to whatever their opiate issue was that they were having. It's very common to use kratom to detox. People use it to detox themselves.
But then they get stuck on kratom, right?
And then they get stuck on kratom. Yeah, kratom is a weird drug. It's not an honest opioid, but it does have activity at the opiate receptor. So people get opiate symptoms. You have opiate withdrawal. But about a third of people, when they stop kratom, they're fine. I mean, they're like nothing.
It's not a big deal.
No big deal. Nothing bad happens. Headache, feel crummy, a little sad, because it has other effects that are kind of like an antidepressant. About a third of people go through really just rough. I mean, bad as fentanyl. and miserable, absolutely miserable. And the rest of them are sort of in the middle. We like to use Suboxone for the transition off. The bigger question is, what do you do with these people afterwards? Should they stay on Suboxone when they were on Kratom? And people don't know I don't know the answer to that. I think it's person to person, but it's a helpful tool for getting people off. But what I like to do, just as technical stuff, but I like to wait and see which group they're in, because you might be one of the ones that doesn't need anything.
Right.
Something to help you sleep, a little something for nausea, irritability, that kind of thing. But short-term symptomatic relief, not Suboxone. If that's the case, that's great.
Once in a while, outside entities will talk to me about like drug addiction and recovery and kind of like ask me my opinion about Suboxone versus abstinence or whatever.
Sure.
And because outside of being a drug addict in recovery, the numbers illustrate people on Suboxone have way higher probability.
They live.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So like in dealing with that, do you like to keep people on Suboxone when you?
Yeah. So the question is, how long should I stay on this, right? How long should I stay on this? And I think it's worth a conversation with the patients or anyone who's contemplating being on it, because it's, you weren't born opiate deficient, right? You didn't come into the world short 2 quarts of heroin or down a few strips of Suboxone. So we're not replacing a deficiency. With that said, it's very difficult in the beginning to maintain abstinence. And in the case of relapsing on fentanyl, the chances are significant that something really bad could happen to you. I mean, death, obviously, but there's other things in between that will leave you with lasting problems from a fentanyl relapse, like passing out on your leg for several hours and winding up with a dead leg or muscle damage. Passing out and getting an anoxic brain injury that doesn't kill you, but you've had a stroke, essentially.
We had a kid on here who OD'd on fentanyl near some kind of kerosene lantern, and he burned his leg off.
So yeah, perfect example. So there's a lot of other things that can happen to you besides just overdose and dying, casualties that are not lethal. So we want to avoid that. That's the thing you definitely don't want to do. But do you need to be on Suboxone the rest of your life? I think some people probably should. I think some people, it's just a better deal, right? This is, if you're not dead of an overdose and the Suboxone doesn't kill you, now you're dealing with a quality of life problem, not a quantity of life. And so for some people to stay on it, I think that's reasonable. I think, it's a certain percentage. It's not a huge percentage, but some people should probably stay on it indeterminately.
Right.
For everyone else, and that's most people, what I say is that you should stay on Suboxone. I think of it like a cast for a broken leg. So you don't want to go without the cast because your leg's going to heal bad, or maybe worse things happen. You also don't want to leave the cast on the rest of your life, because you'll get atrophy and an infection, and then you'll wind up dead from that. Although I don't think you're probably going to die from Suboxone. So you should stay on it until your life looks like you want it to, until
training wheels or something.
It's like training wheels, like a cast. So until all the rest of your recovery objectives you're good with. So live where you want to live, eat what you want to eat, with who you want to be with, doing what you want to do, wearing what you want to wear, all that, whatever your personal sense of, okay, I'm good. And then there's another piece of it, which is, I recommend that you have something that either is or strongly resembles recovery. So that's someone you can be honest with, someone who you already are honest with, someone who you're up to date with their lives and yours, that you tell the truth to, that they know what's going on. Because as you taper off the Suboxone, the feelings to use are going to come back. So you're going to need that person. And well past when you're on it, life is going to come up. And if you say, well, if the shit hits the fan, then I'll, find somebody on Reddit to talk to. That's a bad strategy.
Right.
You need to be engaged. If that's 12-step, hooray. If that's church, that's hooray. If that's your CrossFit group, great. If that's your
whatever
stitch and bitch when you make a quilt together, whatever it is.
Stitch and bitch.
Yeah, if
is
you
that
know
a
making
thing?
a quilt and you're
Quilting
talking
and-
about, that's fine because you're with people.
Is that a
and you're
big
doing
thing out in California?
huge.
Stitching and bitching?
Huge. It's massive. Yeah,
Amazing.
Yeah. No, but anyhow, you've got to have something where you're engaged. And then I don't think you need, at a certain point, you don't need a Suboxone.
I could talk to you all day, doctor. Will you come back sometime?
Sure.
Be an expert, be our dopey doctor expert type?
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
You want to play
cool.
the game before we go?
Let's play the game.
The game is not great. I was not ready for you to play the game. The game is called This or That. And you just pick one or the other. Dilaudid or fentanyl?
Fentanyl.
Chiropractor or acupuncture?
Acupuncture.
RFK or Elon?
RFK.
LSD or mushrooms?
Oh, neither.
Ayahuasca or ibogaine?
Ayahuasca.
The Untouchables or Operation Ivy?
The Untouchables.
Dr. Drew or Bob Forrest?
Oh, that's a toss-up.
Methadone or Suboxone?
Suboxone.
Lakers or Clippers?
Clippers.
Angels or the Dodgers?
Dodgers.
English Beat or the Specials?
English Beat.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Because I'm older and they grew on me. They hold up. The Specials are
I think
okay.
the Specials hold up better than
You
the
think
English
so?
Beat. I
want to hear that argument.
Well, the thing with the Specials is that really they had 2.5 records.
Mm-hmm.
They have the Specials, they have the Specials, more Specials, and they have the Specials, the singles collection.
Yeah. Special Beat Service.
Well, the Special Beat Service was a weird offshoot with the English Beat.
Right.
Anyway, I personally am a Specials guy, but I listen to the Specials so much that I can't listen to it anymore.
Right.
Like I can't hear Gangsters again.
Right.
Even though it's so superior to anything in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And the English Beat I love, but they have a poppy sensibility that make them less cool than the Specials.
I liked the Beatles when I was younger, but I like them much more when I've gotten older.
Saying you feel the same way
I
about
feel the same kind of way about the English Beat.
when you say the English Beat, you don't say the beat.
Yeah.
Me
With the
too.
beat, the English Beat.
I was in California when I came off of I went to treatment in Florida and I moved to California to get off of heroin and all this stuff. And my friend had just started doing meth and didn't tell me, and I moved into his house and I started doing meth with him.
Welcome
and
aboard.
He had a job in Manhattan Beach helping somebody build his front room. And he was like, you can come and help. And I was like, all right. And they never paid me. And I went for a week straight. And the last night we were high on meth, building this front room of the house. And we started walking around town. And Dave Wakeling was playing in Manhattan Beach. And I'm all tweaked out on fucking meth. And I went up to him.
His solo thing when he was doing all those
And I
clubs,
went up to him in the club to shake his hand because he really needed to meet me. And it was very awkward. But I always feel good about it. I love both those bands, and
they're both good. That was not easy, but yeah, English Beat.
So, what was better, this show or David Duchovny's Cockamamie show?
Well, let's see.
We can take it as a toss up. Or are you going to say David Duchovny, Mulder or Scully?
Mulder, of course, but David and I are friends. So
we can be friends.
We when we get there, when we get to that stage, David and I are friends. So it's like just bullshitting with your friend. It's just hanging out. And so it's not that in that sense, it's different. You're much further along in the podcast development process. So it was a funny thing. If you saw the one that I did with David, his son is coming in from behind him and it's chasing him around the room. And
it's never optimal podcasting like that.
That's an example. So the content is like, being interviewed by one of your longtime friends. So that's just the easy conversation. The environment and the setup and it's remote instead of here. So I don't think it's a fair comparison. I'll say it's not a toss up.
I really enjoyed you coming in. And let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Before you say what a good time you had. When fentanyl becomes this crazy epidemic and everybody's on fentanyl. Is anyone even on heroin anymore?
Once in a while. Very,
Where are they getting
very
it?
once in a while.
They're like, I'm just got out of Afghanistan.
I'll tell you a funny story. So there was a young lady that came into Oro not that long ago, and she was there for opiates. She had tested positive for opiates. She was there for detox, but she was pretty angry. She was which is uncharacteristic. Usually there's a different set of feelings, but she was upset, and we got to I asked her what was wrong, and she said, well, I tested positive for fentanyl. And I said, that's pretty common. It's everywhere. And she said, no, you don't understand. The Percocets that I got were supposed to be real Percocets. I said, oh, I hate to break it to you, but the drug dealers have presses that are the same presses that they're using in the pharmaceutical companies to press the pills. They've got the same fillers. They have the same imprints. Anyone could be fooled. I even heard a story of a pharmacy selling these things out the back door. So
wow.
Don't take it on the chin that your Percocets were fentanyl and not Percocet. She said, no, you don't understand. I got these from my boyfriend. Right? And I'm still going with it. I said, well, he was probably fooled too. Who knows? She says, no, he told me he tested them. So there's a depth of betrayal there, right? Where it was not just that I was on. Anyhow, this is how drug addicts process things. It's like, okay, I'm back in rehab, and yes, I could have been killed, but I'm really pissed at him for selling me something. Fentanyl's everywhere. Very rarely will you find somebody who's on heroin.
And it's an economic thing, right? What are the farmers doing?
It's the Taliban back in Afghanistan. So the supply of opium has collapsed, and it's really grown in Mexico. You can get some heroin out of Mexico, but the worldwide supply of it is really very difficult to get. And fentanyl is, by comparison, almost free. It's so cheap that it's not worth the risk of being in manufacturing and being a drug dealer to put it together and put it across the borders. So you almost never see it.
Do you think there's any super rich people who are like just doing heroin?
Yes.
And they won't do fentanyl?
Yes.
And they have their cachet of just the best heroin?
I have taken care of some of them, yes.
And give us a little anecdote. Is it like Pulp Fiction where that character, the guy in Pulp Fiction, what's his name? The redhead, is it Ethan Hawke?
Oh, yeah, no.
Who's the guy in Pulp Fiction, the dealer? The redhead guy.
Yeah.
Eric Stoltz.
Eric Stoltz. Yeah, that's right. Well, it's kind of there's a weird cachet with it. It's become this like the top shelf OG brand. That's
like I'm on heroin. I'm not on fentanyl.
I'm not one of those.
I thought that's what this
guys.
Girl was going to be like. I was assured that I've been taking real heroin.
It was a version of that, but it was that her boyfriend had assured her that these were. Everyone knows, or many people know, that fentanyl is super dangerous. It's dangerous because it's super potent, but in the manufacturing process, there's not a lot of quality control.
Of course.
So as the guy is stirring the vat of chemicals, sometimes there's a little extra chocolate chips in one of the cookies, and you can't tell.
Now you're speaking my language,
until
doctor.
You take them. Yeah. So. Yeah, before the fentanyl scourge hit, there were estimated to be somewhere around 50,000 heroin users in this country who had been stably on heroin for 20 years or more. So these are people like Dr. Holstead who reached this plateau and just managed,
It's fucked up that I have this longing to have been one of those people. Isn't that so?
It was the great obsession of every alcoholic to control and enjoy his drinking. Many of us pursue this into the gates of insanity or death. And so when you hear that, it's a line from the Big Book, but the idea of controlling your use for most of us is antithetical to our enjoyment. So enjoying it,
right? Halstead had plateaued,
right? Who knows?
Halstead had plateaued.
No, Halstead had plateaued. Halstead had a essentially relatively constant dose because he was injecting it intramuscularly, so it was relatively flat. Even with that, he would take off increasingly long periods, measured in weeks or months, from work, go to his wife's farm, not far away in Virginia, and and recuperate. So whether that's do a bunch more, or
Kick so you can feel
kick
it.
so we could feel it, or kick so he could function, or try again to regrip the rope for next time. But even the gold standard of your boss knows you're stably on this stuff, and essentially limitless resources and access, it still wasn't smooth for Dr. Holstead. So I don't think that end of the rainbow exists.
Right.
Yeah.
What
yeah.
about Aleister Crowley and the town in Italy and all that stuff?
I don't know that story.
Well, Aleister Crowley was obviously a very famous English drug addict who was also like, he saw himself as a magician and a Satanist and all this stuff. And he had this belief that you could get off heroin by having as much as you ever wanted. So it wasn't this seeking and hunting it down. So he set up, and there's a book called Diary of a Drug Fiend where there's a magician who's the Crowley character in the book, and he sets up a town in Italy, and he sends all the drug addicts to Italy where they have all the heroin they could ever want, and that's how they kick. But nobody really kicks in the book, so it doesn't really matter. The idea is that when we have it, we don't tend to, we can take it or leave it.
So there is something to that notion, which is it's the secret double life that's attractive.
Right, that's so seductive.
Yes, that's seductive, and but the idea that the problem with that is the problem with all these drugs. The problem with whether it's taking 10 Klonopins or shooting 2 milligrams of fentanyl at a time. The problem with that is your brain is smarter than any of the drugs.
Right.
So no matter how much you give it, it will adapt and minimize the effects.
Right. Because it needs more.
Well, listen, imagine, this is a story I like to tell. So imagine it's you and me, we're friends, 60 million.
Like you and David Duchovny?
Even like better.
Okay.
And we're a million years ago, and we're walking along the riverbank, and there's this beautiful bush with these gorgeous berries on there. And we're both starving because it's, the 7-Elevens aren't open yet. And we start eating the berries off of this bush. And the more we eat, the sleepier we get, until we lie down for a nap on the riverbank in the afternoon under the shade of the bush. Now, a million years ago, 2 guys sleeping on the side of the riverbank, defenseless. What do you think happens to those guys?
They're eaten,
right? And the one of us who maybe can fight off the berries a little bit, maybe stumbles away and the lions eat the other guy. So the brain will not stay sleepy. The plants are constantly trying to poison you. That's their defensive mechanism. Fentanyl is a derivative of opium, which comes from the poppy. All these things are plant derivatives. So if you can't process the poisons, then you get eaten by whatever else is there, or you are disabled, or you die. So our brains have evolved this intrinsic detoxing or fighting mechanism to fight off the effects of, you name it, fentanyl, Klonopin, Prozac, coffee, whatever it is. The brain will adapt. It adapts in different ways. So the idea that you could have enough, I don't know that that's a mathematical possibility, because it would be like, I don't know, replacing all of your blood with fentanyl.
Right.
And your brain would probably still figure out, oh, you need some oxygen carrying. But if you could have like fentanyl and hemoglobin, you probably still wouldn't reach this theoretical bliss. So,
but you should read Diary of a Drug Fiend. We should both read it, and then we should do a show about Diary of a Drug Fiend.
And then, do you know the Bulgakov's short story?
No, tell me.
He's he gets word about his friend who's in trouble. His close friend Bulgakov is the character. He's writing the story, but he's also the young doctor who's off in town, and he gets word that his friend is in trouble, and he knows what that means, and so he's worried for him. So he gets the train and hustles back to the town to try to talk to his friend. And I'm going to leave it there and let you read the story, because it's
what's the story called?
It's got a surprising twist. I have to look it up.
Bulgakov?
Yeah. the doctor. I'll get the story
All
for
right.
you.
Thank you very much for coming, Doctor. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you very much. That was really cool.
Yeah, right on.
Fun.